The United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution on Wednesday condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine, with the support of 141 countries out of 193 and a standing ovation in the chamber. Russia voted against a measure, joined by Belarus, North Korea, Eritrea, and Syria. The vote was symbolic and is not legally binding. Still, the vote reflected Russia's growing isolation on the international stage as war rages in Ukraine. The General Assembly's special emergency session in New York was part of a larger UN effort to hold Russia accountable and to find an end to the conflict. The UN is being challenged, the US ambassador, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, told the Assembly before the vote. If it has any purpose, it is to prevent war and to condemn war and to stop war. That is our job here today. The 4-page resolution calls for an immediate halt to the conflict, urges diplomatic negotiations for a peaceful resolution, and says that territorial gain from the threat of force will not be recognized. It demands that Russian forces withdraw immediately, protect civilians and allow the safe passage of humanitarian aid. The resolution also criticizes Belarus, saying it deplores that country's involvement in the war. The Russian government stands increasingly alone, the EU representative, Olof Skoog, said. The European Union and the world stand with the Ukrainian people. Russia's ambassador, Vasily Nebenzya, told the General Assembly that the resolution would not bring peace and accused the United States and its closest allies of exerting pressure on countries to support the resolution through open and cynical threats. 35 countries abstained, including China, Iraq, Iran, India, Pakistan, Armenia and 16 African countries. In speeches to the General Assembly in the past few days, African representatives said that their citizens were being discriminated against in Ukraine and while trying to flee across European borders. Diplomats from developing nations noted that the international community had mobilized far more quickly over the invasion of a European nation than over conflicts raging in Africa, Asia and the Middle East. Germany's foreign minister, Annalena Baerbock, told the General Assembly on Tuesday that when she called counterparts around the world to rally support for Ukraine they had said, "You are calling on us to show solidarity for Europe, but where have you been for us in the past?" Some countries, including China, South Africa and Iran, complained that the resolution was submitted without full consultation and input from all member countries and it therefore risked inflaming rather than de-escalating the crisis. "We had no choice but to abstain," China's ambassador, Zhang Jun, said. Iraq's ambassador, Bahr Aluloom, said that his country, which was invaded by the US in 2003, had abstained because of our sufferings resulting from the continuing wars against our people. Before the vote, the Ukrainian ambassador, Sergiy Kyslytsya, took the podium and held up a blue booklet containing the UN Charter. He invited all countries voting in support of the resolution to sign it and said he would give it to the UN Secretary-General, Antonio Guterres. After the vote, Mr. Guterres told reporters, "The message of the General Assembly is loud and clear. End hostilities in Ukraine, now. Silence the guns, now. War in Europe is no longer confined to our history books or our school books, it is here before our eyes," President Emmanuel Macron said on Wednesday. President Emmanuel Macron of France warned in a televised address on Wednesday that the war in Ukraine would intensify in the coming days and that the conflict heralded a new era of instability in which Europe would need to act more independently on the world stage. War in Europe is no longer confined to our history books or our school books, it is here before our eyes, said Mr. Macron, who spoke solemnly for 15 minutes, addressing the nation in front of the flags of France, Ukraine and the European Union. Faced with this brutal return of tragedy in our history, we must respond with historic decisions. Mr. Macron, who is widely expected to run for re-election in April, has positioned himself at the center of the diplomacy in Europe in recent weeks, burnishing his stature in France and abroad by becoming an interlocutor with President Vladimir V. Putin, though the Russian invasion has underscored the limits of his influence. He has continued to try and tame the violence and spoke with Mr. Putin over the phone as recently as Monday. He has yet to formally announce his candidacy in the presidential elections, but he is expected to do so in the coming days before a legal deadline on Friday.